Thank you, Tora, and welcome everyone. I am going to begin by sharing my screen. We are doing today the week of prayer for Christian unity. And there you go. You should see my presentation in front of you. So the week of prayer for Christian unity is an annual ecumenical Christian observance that's celebrated internationally. And it's practiced every year in the Southern Hemisphere between Ascension Day and Pentecost. And then it's practiced here in the Northern Hemisphere every January 18 to 25. And it's celebrated as an octave, which means it's 8 days long. So it was first observed in January of 1908, which is 114 years ago, by the Atonement Franciscan Covenant on a remote hillside about 50 miles outside of New York City in a place called Graymoor. And it has an interesting backstory. So I want to take a minute or two to share that with you. The Franciscan Friars of the Atonement were started in 1898 by Lorena White and two friends who traveled out to Graymoor to look after the abandoned chapel of St. John in the wilderness. And they were Episcopalian. And more people began to join them, including a man named Reverend Lewis Watson, yes, with two T's. And it was Reverend Watson who started the Octave of Prayer for Unity about 9 years after he joined the people there in Graymoor in 1908. Then the next year, this group of 17 adherents was received into the Roman Catholic tradition. Their groups, two of them, were known as the Franciscan Friars of the Atonement and the Sisters of the Atonement. And part of the initial desire for this octave of prayer for Christian unity was to reunite the Episcopal Church with the Holy See of the Roman Catholic Church. But the idea caught on and grew and became a global observation, not of reunification, but of unity. And so the days were initially selected around the Feast of St. Peter's Chair on January 22nd and the Feast of the Conversion of St. Paul on January 25th. I had to look this up just so you know. The Feast of St. Peter's Chair uses the chair in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome as a focal point to symbolize the office and authority that Christ bestowed on Peter in Matthew 16:18, where he says, "You are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church." And the Feast of the Conversion, of St. Paul, as recorded in Acts 9, we all know, was when Paul was on the road to Damascus and was blinded by Jesus's glory. So Pope Pius gave his blessing to this church unity octave when the group was accepted into the Roman Catholic Church in 1909. Then in 1916, Pope Benedict XV extended the observance to the whole church, and the recognition by papal authority gave the octave its momentum to kind of spread throughout the whole Roman Catholic Church. During the same time period, other communions were also praying for unity, and the idea of a week of prayer for each other caught on across Jesus's whole universal church. The Anglican Lambeth conferences, for example, were promoting prayer and unity. And in 1878, the bishops spoke of their desire to support a season of prayer for all of Christendom. In 1913, the Faith and Order Commission of the Protestant Episcopal Church called for prayer for unity on Whit Sunday, which is another name for Pentecost. And the Conference of Faith and Order in Geneva in 1920 appealed for a special week of prayer, which would end on Whit Sunday. Then in 1935, Paul Courtier, who was a priest in the Archdiocese, the Catholic Archdiocese of Lyons in France, publicly said how good it would be to pull together the Catholic prayers with the Protestant prayers. And so together, he said the whole effort might be called the Week of Prayer for Christian Unity, and that is indeed what happened. Today, the week belongs to all Christians who sincerely are interested in the fulfillment of Christ's prayer that all may be one. It's sponsored jointly, and this is important, jointly by the Commission on Faith and Order of the World Council of Churches and the Roman Catholic Pontifical Council for Promoting Christian Unity. The materials are still published by Graymore in their Ecumenical and Interreligious Institute in New York. The theme for the Week of Prayer for Christian Unity is selected every year by a different group of Christians from all over the world. For example, last year, it was the Sisters of Grand Champ in Switzerland. This year, it was selected by the Middle East Council of Churches, originating particularly with the churches in Lebanon. And present times in Lebanon are really quite challenging economically, and made even more so because of COVID, like the rest of the world. And these churches in Lebanon wanted Christians all around the world to be called together to prayer and worship, even in the midst of difficult times. So they chose Matthew chapter 2, verse 2. We saw the star in the east and came to worship him. This theme pulls together the ideas of epiphany, revelation, coming together, and worship. So global Christianity this week is celebrating the gift of unity under the revelation of the star and the good news that came to us from that day forward. Every United Methodist annual conference across the connection is encouraged to participate with ecumenical service of prayer and worship as a part of our statement from our Constitution that we believe that we're a part of the Church Universal, which is one body in Christ. So let's talk about some ideas for participation. Some things you could do. You could use part of the litany during your Sunday morning worship service. You could teach about what the week of prayer is during your worship service. And actually, that should be this coming Sunday, the 23rd. You could you could have a time of prayer for churches in the Middle East, for Lebanon, or for other Christians around the world, all Christians around the world. You could do that during your pastoral prayer time or some other time in the church service. You could organize a joint online worship service with other local congregations in your area. You could write letters of prayer and encouragement to some of the other churches in your neighborhood. You could choose a ministry project that you could all do together. You could hold a Bible study together on the second chapter of Matthew together. Or you could together write letters to your local newspaper or other media outlets that talk about unity and unity of the church in particular and how important that is. There's lots of things you could do, and if we have time, we might be able to share some of those. Additionally, this week, there are some things that you can join. We mentioned the Methodist Ecumenical Office in Rome. They're joining together with the Methodist Liaison Office in Jerusalem, and they're going to be hosting a panel webinar called Voices from Bethlehem, Christian Unity in the Birthplace of Jesus. That's on this Friday, January 21st, and it'll be a little bit easier for Esther because it's at 3:00 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Rome time, 10 a.m. Jerusalem time. Then the Friars of Graymore will be celebrating on their Facebook page with a live stream at the Graymore Institute, and that'll be tomorrow, January 19th at noon Eastern U.S. time. And that service is also going to be recorded. The National Workshop on Christian Unity, as Tora mentioned, will also be using the theme, and it'll take place in California, May 3rd through 5th, And alongside that national workshop, UMEIT USA is going to be focusing on what does it look like to create ecumenical worship. And remember that you can always use this time of Christian unity. If you can't do it this week, you can do it anytime. This is just the week Christians around the world will be doing it, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. So in front of you now, you see the website. It's GEII, Graymore Ecumenical and Interreligious Institution.org. And there, if you go there, you can find prayer cards, suggestions for music. You'll find a liturgy that you could incorporate in your service on Sunday. There's commentary on the text to help you write your sermon. They're daily scripture suggestions and prayers and actual sermon notes. And then there are also resources, all of those were free. There are additional resources that you can purchase, like bulletin covers and posters, and they would match that blue and yellow star image that you see on the screen. All of this is in several languages. So I am going to end the slideshow and just see, we have 15 minutes. Tori, do you think we might have time to just ask if anybody is doing anything special in their area?
I think that would be great. Does anybody want to pop in? You can just unmute yourself and go ahead and speak.
Sure, I'll start. My name is Kimberly. I'm a United Methodist pastor serving an ELCA congregation. And so we are taking the liturgy almost in its entirety to do for this Sunday. We're making just a few modifications of some of our order, but I've got my star printed out that I'm going to cut out for the children's sermon, and we're going to paste the stars on. It was one of the suggestions in the liturgy, but we're going to do it for the young disciples message. We are using the Trisagion chant because I think it's very simple. So we're going to teach the congregation that. We're going to avoid the song that's in Arabic. That's just going to be a little bit too hard for us. Although I think it would be fun. But we're pretty much using the liturgy as printed, except for just a very few changes to what fits for our space. We are also doing the creed as written without the et filioque that proceeds from the Father and the Son. So that'll be an interesting moment in worship as well.
That's awesome. Esther, go ahead.
So I'm in the board of the Ecumenical Council of Austria, and we always prepare the big service with all these bishops of different churches. And because there is Corona time and it's not so good to sing together, we invited people from churches that are represented in the Middle East to sing their hymns and traditions. So we will have a Maronite opera singer and 2 or 3 Syrian Orthodox participants. And I'm very interested what will happen on Thursday, and I'm the responsible for the sermon.
We will pray for you and for your sermon.
Thank you very much. I made notices about the GEII website, so maybe I will find some idea there.
Excellent, excellent.
But for me, one idea I had, the wise men came from the east to oh, my English. What's the sentence in Matthew 2:2? How it
to
ends?
worship.
To worship, yes.
Yeah.
And 7 years ago, we had a lot of people coming from the Near East to Europe, and some of them saw the star of Jesus and came to worship him in our countries. So that's one bridge I hope to build. Yes.
Very cool. Rock, I saw that you added a link in the chat. Do you want to tell us about it?
Sure. I'm here in the Southwest in Arizona, and UCC pastor, most recently served a United Methodist appointment and grew up in a Federated church. I was our moderator for our Southwest conference this past year and got connected to a wonderful group in New Mexico. And because of the pandemic, they've taken their pilgrimage online. So all of those resources are available. It's the New Mexico Pilgrimage for Unity, and it's through the New Mexico Ecumenical Institute for Ministry, which is, for those of you that might be familiar with the religious, Roman Catholic religious order, the Norbertines. They have an ecumenical institute in Albuquerque. And so they are the sponsoring group, and there's both Protestant and lots of Roman Catholic participation in the New Mexico pilgrimage for unity. It's a wonderful opportunity. I became a walker during the pandemic and lost 112 pounds. So it was a great way for me to kind of live into the new me and also pray at the same time in a virtual way. So take a look at their website.
Cute. Maybe one more, Tura?
Yeah, I was going to say that's super cool. Thank you, Rock, for adding us to that possibility. Daniel, it looks like you unmuted. Go for it.
Yeah, I was just going to share briefly. I'll admit that this week snuck up on me, and so we don't have any special services going on at my church. I serve a United Methodist congregation in Wichita, Kansas, as the associate pastor. But one thing this conversation sparks for me is I want to tune in, and I'm planning to tune into the Focolare virtual prayer for Christian unity. I don't know if you all are familiar with this group, the Focolare. They're a lay movement of the Catholic Church. And I got connected to them when I was abroad in Switzerland. And then when I was in seminary in Atlanta, got connected with the community there. And so this is a group that has inspired me a lot. I think they live out the spirituality of unity in really just beautiful ways. And so I've been a part of their prayers in the past years, and this reminds me to get in contact with them so I can be a part of that virtual service that I'm sure they're going to have sometime in the near future. So it's one thing I'm doing.
Thank you. And those are, they're all 4 wonderful possibilities and ideas. And I want to thank you all for letting me talk so fast that you all would have time to share. And also so that Chris now has time for us to live out what we're talking about. We're going to spend a little bit of extra time today in prayer for the Universal Church. So Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Jean. So this morning, I am going to invite us into a time of prayer. I'm posting in the chat. You can see some various categories that I will invite us to share prayers with one another. I always feel when I'm in groups and we're told that there's an opportunity for us to lift up prayers like, oh, am I sharing that in the right thing, or is there going to be a new category that's coming that would be more fitting? So you can see those there, but we'll be using some of the liturgy from Graymore this morning with some adaptations. They have prayers available